Welcome to another episode of The Breakdown. A few months back, we made a commitment to try and explore the recent conversations around Black Lives Matter and systemic racism in Canada. We want to be very clear. There is no doubt that there is a very real problem with racism and systemic racism in Canada. Any racism is a problem, full stop. And that's a very difficult thing for a lot of people to accept. For people who don't have to deal with the effects of racism on a daily basis, the idea that there are Canadians who are oppressed for no reason other than the color of their skin can be a difficult one to accept because it doesn't fit with their idea of what Canada is. At the same time, for people who have to contend with racism on a daily basis, the idea that there are Canadians who struggle with or outright reject the notion that they experience the prejudice that they do every day can not only create a lot of frustration, but also a lot of anger. And when either side tries to engage because of what their experiences have given them to bring to the conversation, it creates the potential for some very uncomfortable conversations. But let's be clear. If we ever want to move forward and address some of these problems, we're going to have some uncomfortable conversations. There will be some people who find the interview that we're about to share with you very uncomfortable indeed. Because in order to better understand Black Lives Matter, we sat down with both the president and the vice president of the Calgary chapter of Black Lives Matter. Now, to be clear, while we don't agree with or endorse everything that's said in this video, we do think that it's a very important conversation, if for no other reason than to provide a little bit of understanding as to where some of the organizers of Black Lives Matter are coming from and what's driving, at least in part, their recent protests. We also want to highlight that the issue of appropriation is a deeply problematic cultural phenomenon that is hurtful to members of diverse cultures and confusing to those who feel entitled to partake in cultural expressions that they feel inclined towards. In the effort to better understand what cultural appropriation entails, the Breakdown team would like to offer this interview in the hopes we can encourage a broader discussion while understanding how to approach diversity and inclusion more responsibly. We also want to emphasize that we do not edit for content when we interview people. That being said, if you're paying close attention, particularly if you're watching the video version of this conversation, you may notice one edit at around 36 minutes and another at around 46 minutes. And that is honestly just because we had a camera whose battery died. We've done our best to keep what happened during the battery loss intact, but the audio is a bit off for those areas. Please bear with it. The conversation is worth listening to. So without further delay, here we go. Welcome to another one of our interview segments here on The Breakdown. And today we're very fortunate to be joined by Adora, who's the president of Black Lives Matter in Calgary, as well as Elle, who's the vice president of Black Lives Matter in Calgary. So first of all, thank you both so much for being willing to sit down with us today.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, thank you so much.
So to start with, there's, I think, a lot of confusion around Black Lives Matter, and I think one of the things that I'd like to try to do today is sort some of that out. So at its core, can you tell me what is Black Lives Matter?
Oh. Black Lives Matter is a movement that was started about 4 years ago.
Okay.
Because of police brutality. So Eric Garner, I believe, died. Tamir Rice, the list is so long. But a black woman was like, this is too much. And she started saying Black Lives Matter. And people jumped onto that phrase, that sentence, because it's a full sentence. And they decided to start an organization. So Black Lives Matter began actually because specifically in Toronto, they wanted to interrupt Pride. So the events part started when they interrupted Pride.
Okay.
So it's interesting that though it is a U.S. organization, Toronto was the first to have sort of a pushback protest. So Canada was not paying attention to its black people within the LGBTQ community, and Black Lives Matter was like, this is a problem. So there are many chapters across, quite frankly, it's worldwide now, it's international. So there are people who are registered, there are people who are not. Black Lives Matter in general is a foundation that has a point of view, and they support people in trying to advocate for Black people.
Okay. Is there a singular mandate? We certainly saw, I mean, right here in Olympic Plaza, we saw recently some protests that happened that appeared to be in response to the recent killings that we've seen in the States by police officers. Is there a singular mandate for addressing that kind of violence, or is it a broader spectrum?
So Black Lives Matter is for any type of anti-Black racism, oppression, et cetera, which covers a lot of stuff. We've been at it a long time. However, right now, Black Lives Matter actually is supporting specifically defund the police. So that is their focus at this moment, which doesn't mean that they are not focused on many other things also, but there is a great push right now because all of our lives are affected on a regular basis by police brutality, whether we know it or not. And we're actually finding out more and more how much police brutality based on anti-Black racism is affecting the whole world.
Okay. So with the defund the police piece, on its face, a lot of people interpret that term to mean that we should take away all the money from the police and either just hope they show up because of good intentions and pay for their own gas or whatever. That's how a lot of people interpret it. So what does defund the police mean to you two?
Ooh, Elle, you want to take that one?
Okay, so it's really harmful, manipulative to think that defund the police means to take away all of the funding, give cops no authority whatsoever, and then just let crime just happen. That's clearly not what we want. We don't even want right now to abolish the police. So right now, taking away funds, like Calgary's budget is ridiculously high. It's almost double, if not actually double, public transit, and people just don't seem to care. And the way that the police are handling their jobs isn't stellar, and we'd like to hold them accountable.
Okay. So with if the goal isn't to defund them or to take away their money, why use that tagline?
Oh no,
Oh,
we want to
hold
take
on.
away their money.
Right.
Just not
Yeah.
all of it.
We want to take away the money.
Where do you want to? So the next question then becomes, where do you want to take it from, and what would you like to see it put towards?
Ooh, like 30% of the city's budget is for policing.
Okay.
Are the police successful 100% of the time? Absolutely not even close.
Okay.
So if police are here to like help us within our daily lives, police don't show up until a crime has happened, technically.
Okay.
Crime happens because people are hungry, they are not housed, they feel like they don't have a job, they're useless. There's so many reasons that people are doing things that are against the law.
Okay.
That we don't have to, this is not the place to stop that. So if we take some money from the police, quite frankly, I'm down to take all the money. So L is a little less radical. But quite frankly, if we take those monies and put it into housing, into education, into socialized programs, into just supporting people in their lives in general, things are going to look really different. There's going to be less crime. It has been proven time and time again. And quite frankly, before we get a new helicopter, people need homes.
Okay. I guess the next obvious question from there then, I mean, there's obviously differing of opinions in regards to what extent defunding should be, and I think it's important to highlight that, first of all, that there's room for ongoing discussion there. if one was to abolish the police or to fully defund them, how would law enforcement happen?
We have a military, right? The military
Okay.
is about violence.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the military would come in and deal with violent crimes.
Okay.
Yeah, so we can have people who deal with people breaking the law. It doesn't have to be police. They don't have to have a gun. They don't have to have tasers. They don't need to use lethal force.
Okay.
So all those things can happen without actual policing, and the military can come in and do things that are violent. Quite frankly, the military is well funded and underutilized here in Canada.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure that they could find some folks who want to do some
Policing type stuff.
policing type stuff. Thank you.
So how does one of the other criticisms that I've heard leveled towards the police, particularly in regards to the new RV, is the whole, and certainly we've seen a lot of this in the States recently with what we've seen in Portland and what we've seen across the States where they're picking people up and throwing them in vans. One of the big arguments is the police have become too militarized. So I have to ask, if the police are becoming too militarized, why would we want to replace them with the military?
Oh, because the military only does violence.
Okay.
So the police don't only do violence, is it?
No,
The
they
po-
do a lot
because
more.
that's
do
why we're
everything.
upset with them.
Okay.
Because they're killing people who are doing things that are non-violent,
Okay.
that have nothing. Nobody's going to lose their life.
Okay.
That we can de-escalate to do. So that's why I specifically said the military. So when you're dealing with violence and crime, you have somebody to take over. If we continue to have police,
Okay.
because some people are going to want that, they should not be responding to violence with violence. They should be de-escalating every time.
Okay.
The police continuously say that their lives are at risk, but they're killing people at a higher rate that are not armed or violent than they're being attacked
Okay.
and losing their lives.
Okay.
So, quite frankly, we could have social workers are doing policing all the time without killing people in that moment. We have mental
Nurses.
health advocates who, on a regular basis, are taking down people who have like knives and weapons and are not losing their lives. So there are many other ways to, advocate for following the law without it having to be police and a lethal amount of violence.
Okay. I'm curious if I'll make this one for you, Elle.
Okay.
Because you don't want to defund them all the way.
Mhm.
Would you support one of the programs that, for example, CPS has is the PACT team? Would you support increased funding for stuff like that?
Absolutely. I've legitimately talked to one of the police. I'm not sure what his level is. I'm pretty sure it was deputy chief, but I think there's a bunch of them. And that came up. And I said, well, I get that they're there. I knew they were there before he told me about them. The only thing is he keeps directing me to Alberta Health. So, like, teams like that, we understand that it's not just them. We
Okay.
understand that you have to go higher than them to get the funding as well. So I would like to see actually some of the funding go towards that.
Okay. You looked
Okay.
like you had something you wanted
No,
to add there?
I want to ask what's PACT?
So PACT is a team where you have a police officer and you have usually an RN or a social worker, and they're mandated to respond specifically to people in crisis. And their whole, they check up on people kind of like the dope team does as well, but their whole mandate is to try to de-escalate situations and to prevent situations from escalating to a point where the police feel that they have to use force in order to prevent the situation from escalating further, I'll say.
So why does that have to be associated with the police at all?
I'm speculating.
And that,
but
for me, that is what I would prefer,
okay,
to have a mental health professional, a nurse, show up because they deal with this on a regular basis,
Yeah.
and people still have their lives.
Yeah.
They still have their eyes. They still have their limbs. Why do we have to associate that with the police?
I think the argument would be, and again, I'm just speculating. I'm not a police officer, so I'm just the host of a podcast. But I think the argument would be that for somebody who's truly in crisis and a threat to themselves or to others, the only way to get them to a hospital or to get them to a mental health professional, if they don't want to go, is under what's called a Form 10.
So then you call the police.
Okay.
Do you see what I'm saying?
There's always a level.
So the police don't have to show up with an RN. An RN can show up.
Okay.
We don't have that program. We have a program where the police show up and bring an RN.
Yeah.
Why don't we have programs where the professionals in these realms show up?
We're not teaching people to call 211.
Right.
Okay.
That's the problem.
Okay, I like that answer.
Because people instinctively call 911. I had this conversation just like a few days ago with my mom, and she was like, there's a girl in Ontario, she's playing ding dong ditch. Her neighbor called the cops instead of bylaw, which is what he should have done, and she got arrested, and she thinks there's excessive force, which, I mean, I watched the tape. Yes, there's an argument for it. Yeah, people need to start calling 211.
Okay. So
And
there's an
211
educational piece for the public, for sure.
Yes.
Okay.
Great. And 211 needs to be better funded to be able to address these things immediately.
Okay.
Not a day later, 2 days later, or a week later. That's quite frankly why I'm saying, yeah, PACT is great, but why do the police have to come at all? If it means that they need a Form 10, they don't do it right away. You can call the police show up in 7 minutes or under.
You wish.
Depending on the nature
That's
of the
their
call.
goal.
That's the
That's the goal.
mandate.
That's their
I tried
goal.
to be nice one time.
I'm sorry, I couldn't.
You see
guess
why we're a great team? So yeah, the police can show up in 7 minutes if it becomes dire. Also, let's understand that we can have nurses that are also skillful in a way that does not involve a weapon or a taser.
Okay.
Nurses could know how to take out people too. They can have more than one skill. So you could, we have EMTs and EMRs and firefighters and police officers. You can have all those skills. Why can't we have people with more than one skill set that is not focused on policing?
Okay. I don't have an answer for that.
Yeah. No, it's rhetorical. It's just we
Yeah.
haven't done that yet in this realm.
Yeah. How would you contrast that with one of the big, we've certainly seen lots of campaigns over the last year or two from healthcare workers who are raising concerns about them being assaulted, them being attacked, physically, verbally, you name it. And they're not, and this is happening in a clinical setting. So certainly outside of a clinical setting, I think there's an argument to be made that there's a higher risk of violence. We saw the
social
care aide,
worker last year.
just a little while ago, who
Yeah.
was unfortunately murdered.
I have one thing to say.
Yeah.
If you take cops out of, again, the conversation I had, there was a lot of programs that they have, which are great, but I feel like a lot of them are redundant. So if you take some of them off, some of those programs out of schools, all schools, and then put them with these nurses, that's even a better solution than, just sending just a cop.
Okay.
I wouldn't send the police. I would defund those people and take their money and give nurses that secondary skill set.
Okay.
Because we don't need a police officer. We don't need law enforcement when somebody is in trauma and freaking out and waving their hands all over the place. People feel like it's unsafe, but the second you step into there and you don't know how to take that person and subdue them, yes. But the police aren't coming in and subduing that person. They're shooting them. They're tasing them. They are putting their knees in their throat. So really the point is that we have all of the resources to deal with this sort of stuff. How are we using those resources? Why are we sending police first in every instance, especially when they are not 100% effective.
Okay. One of the other questions that comes up quite a bit, certainly online and certainly in person, is you'll have organizations such as yourself, Black Lives Matter, and then the counter argument is always, well, all lives matter.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you respond to people who try to counter Black Lives Matter with all lives matter?
I stopped, but there's a 2 on the end of Black Lives Matter.
Okay.
It's okay. The thing is, when you say something that's pro-black, everyone assumes it's anti-white, which is usually never the case. And right now, that's not the case.
It's never the case that it is in contradiction so much that it's harmful to whiteness or anything else.
Okay.
So even when it is being talked as in black supremacy doesn't harm whiteness. It cannot. It does not have any power base to do so.
Okay.
No, that's totally fair.
Okay. How would you, for somebody who feels, and granted this may very well be somebody who's in a significant position of privilege, but for somebody who feels that they're being attacked by the idea of Black Lives Matter, since we're just talking about de-escalation, how would you de-escalate that person to see what you just said?
I just read something fantastic. It said, carrots are a vegetable. Do you agree?
Well, they're a root vegetable, but yeah.
Carrots are a root vegetable.
Okay, sure, yeah, I can get behind that.
Okay. That doesn't mean that potatoes are not. What else is a root vegetable? Sweet potatoes are not, yams are not. It doesn't mean all those things are not root vegetables, because it is a root vegetable, full stop.
Okay.
Black Lives Matter, full stop. There's no assumption that white lives do not, that Asian lives do not, that indigenous lives do not. There's no assumption there. It's not said there anywhere. It says Black Lives Matter. The people who feel like they are being attacked, they know that they behave like Black lives do not matter. They know that their actions, their behavior, the things that they're engaging in solidify that or perpetuate that Black lives do not matter. This is why they get upset. It's like if I came up to you and I said, black t-shirts suck, and you know you're wearing a black t-shirt.
I wouldn't care, but...
Right. Because you know that your black t-shirt doesn't suck.
Well, it's a pretty kick-ass t-shirt, I don't mind saying.
So this is why, like, if we know that Black Lives Matter is a kick-ass statement, why does anybody need to feel upset at that statement? It's because they feel like they're adding to that. They feel like they are pushing back before even the statement is being made, quite frankly. So, to be honest, like, when I show up in a space and somebody is like, oh my gosh, you're so amazing, and I'm like, or you look so beautiful, and I'm like, I know, they're upset. Because really, I should be accepting of whatever they're putting on me. And I left my house looking cute. I didn't think about you when I left my house.
Okay.
So I don't need your approval.
Okay.
I appreciate it. But it's not a must. I'm not a bad person because I didn't appreciate your approval. Neither are you a bad person because you didn't come to me to give me your approval. So it's kind of like we keep hearing this, you know, you don't have to hose down the house that's not on fire. Well, we're seeing that black people are living a genocide.
Our houses are on fire.
And we need some water. We're demanding water because we put water on everybody else's house.
Okay.
We've built people's homes for free.
To be completely honest, when you have an argument with someone that starts it with all lives matter, they're not there to listen.
No.
I've had that conversation.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you learn really quick which person's actually gonna like have a constructive conversation with you, and like it's really rare.
Ooh, and here's another thing is that some people won't get it right away. The amount of people who have met me, who don't like me, who don't like my ideas, and come back a year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years later and say, oh my God, you were right. But truly, like, nobody needs my approval. So if that's what you want to believe, feel free. It's not our job to change people's minds. But the consequences are there now.
Okay.
Because we see on a regular basis that anti-blackness is toxic and deadly. So a Canadian woman named Amy said, I'm going to call the police and tell them that you're an African American. She knew what she was doing.
Yeah.
She's probably a person who would say Black Lives Matter. So it's not just the people who are purposely pushing back that we need to reassess how they engage with Black Lives Matter and blackness in general.
One of the things that I'd like to get your take on, I don't think there's any doubt that visible minorities, certainly in the United States, Canada as well, experience a significantly higher degree of oppression than white folks.
White folks are not oppressed.
Exactly. So
your bar is extremely low.
And I'd like to correct you also. Visible minorities is only said to make people like Elle and myself feel like we are less than, so we should ask for less than and accept less than. So we are not minor in how we exist in the world, how the world impacts us, or in numbers.
Okay, let me rephrase it then. Let's go with visible ethnicities.
Racialized people.
Okay, that works too.
Or BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, and people of color.
Okay, well, BIPOC then. There's no question that BIPOC are more oppressed than anyone else. Is that a safe statement?
100%.
Okay. Going with that, there's clearly a power imbalance. So if Black Lives Matter doesn't have an interest in changing people's minds, how are you going to address that power imbalance when the power is being held by people who do say all lives matter?
We center blackness and support Black people.
Okay.
So Black people have power. Black people are viable, impactful, and important to the world in general. Quite frankly, half the things that we have, we wouldn't have outside of Black people. So, for instance, when we talk about appropriation, this is where we're saying, hey, you can't take what we have and enjoy it and have your mindset and push us in a corner.
Okay.
So, peanut butter, stoplights, it's like so many things, like Black people. So if you don't want to like Black people, let us take back all of our lights. Let's take back our entertainers. Like the NFL, people are losing it because Black folks aren't running around pushing each other down. So if you have that mindset, then you don't need to come to the NFL. We take that away from you.
Okay.
We make our presence in your lives non-existent because we're important, we're impactful, we're magical. So I don't need to change anybody's mind. I just know that I'm not going to be in their space and that I'm going to encourage other Black people to not be in their space, and then they're going to find out that mayonnaise is not the only flavor spice that you want on your food.
For me, it's this is so hard to admit, being like vice president, but like I was deep in the sunken place for so long that like it took seeing someone and hearing numbers of people being killed for me to wake up. It's like once you empower yourself, you can help others and you can lift the entire community up. So then it's not like we're on the bottom, we're not scraping the barrel here, we're actually getting to our level.
Okay.
That's how I.
How do you fix the power imbalance, though, is I think what I'm trying to explore a little bit.
Again,
That
like Black-owned businesses. So Elle is a business owner. I support Black business. We want to encourage Black business. I want to encourage people to center Blackness so that Black people are now having a different experience, so that we demand a different experience. So if you empower people, for instance, I'll be in a lineup at the grocery store. This is before COVID-19. Everybody's having a nice conversation, and when I show up, nobody wants to talk. And I ask, well, why didn't you say hello to me? Why don't you want to talk to me? Lots of people don't feel safe enough to do that.
Okay.
But when I do that and challenge someone, they might think, oh, why didn't I? And then they might change their mind, and then they might engage more Black people. On the other hand, if a Black person is mean to you one time, for sure it doesn't mean all Black people. So, like, take that with a grain of salt. Trust Black people. When we have money and power, we don't mess it up. It gets messed up for us. So, we are very capable in power positions. We are very capable of running our own lives. It is when racism interrupts us that stuff goes south fast. So, basically what I'm saying is that the people who do support Black Lives Matter need to support more Black people, so that the power balance now becomes off. It's like, what is it called when you don't buy stuff?
Embargo?
A boycott. A boycott.
Okay, boycott.
Yeah, it's like a boycott. So if you're not spending your money in white places, people will change their minds. For instance, the Edmonton football team, EE football, right? Their sponsors said, we're not going to sponsor you anymore. That's what changed. They probably didn't change their mind. I'll be honest, I don't need anybody to change their mind. I need a different experience. You don't have to want to treat me nice. Just treat me nice. I'm going to go to my house. There are people who love me there. You know, like when I go to the grocery store, I don't need you to be in love with me to scan my items and take my money and treat me like I'm human. You don't have to do that for anybody else. You don't love all the white people that you're helping and being nice to, but you're doing it. So trust that Black people are just like everybody else, and then sometimes, and less than sometimes. Oh, I'm so sorry.
I suppose one of the underlying themes or questions is, if the underlying cause of the oppression that Black people, First Nations people experience, and all others, it comes down to racism. How does removing what it sounds like you described, and I could be wrong, but is, well, we're just not going to engage with those folks. That doesn't do anything to mitigate the racism, and it doesn't, to my perception at least, I could be wrong, do anything to change the power structures that allow the people who hold those beliefs to remain in those power structures. I mean, you can build your own power structure, but if somebody has enough power to oppress, they still have enough power to oppress. And one of the interesting conversations that we had on the show a while back was with the First Nations lady who made it very clear she wasn't willing to compromise who she was, but at the same time she also very strongly believed that the more that she exposed people to her culture, the more that they would start to realize that a lot of those assumed racist paradigms are flawed.
Oh, we've been educating people about Black people forever. It's 500 years.
Yeah.
They've been educated, they know.
Well, Black people have been around for longer than 500 years, though.
Pardon?
Black people have been around for longer than 500 years.
Right, but the way that racism manifests itself, is 500 years-ish.
Okay.
That we're facing on Turtle Island. So when I say that, like, center Blackness and support Black people, that really means that, for instance, if my cousin wants to run for office, for political office,
Sure.
then there's more people to support him. so then he can get political office. For instance, Jagmeet Singh from the NDP, that's really how he got power, was that a whole bunch of people were listening to what he was saying and what he was doing, and they liked it, and they put him in public office.
Mm-hmm.
Same with Naheed Nenshi. And a lot of people want to say it's because he's a brown person. No, it's because he had good ideas.
Mm-hmm.
He just happens to be a brown person.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm really asking people to do, is understand that we as Black people are not only here at your discretion, at white people's discretion, at Indigenous people's discretion, at people of color's discretion, at straight people's het people's discretion, cis people's oppressed people are not here to be policed or mandated by anybody else. So the people who do believe in them, use your power to uplift those people, is what I'm saying.
Okay.
So for instance,
Allies?
pardon?
Or allies?
What I want to say is that if there is a store that you know is promoting anti-Blackness, don't go there.
Okay.
Eventually, they will lose their power. If you go to the store that's right beside them, who is promoting centering Blackness, loving people despite their gender, who they love, people who are inclusive and accepting, and want people to belong because of those ideals, then those people are going to get the power. And then more people are going to join. And then more people get power. And then those people who are blaring out anti-Blackness will have to go somewhere else. And I'm happy for them to exist. I'm not going to exist as they abuse me. I'm happy for them to go somewhere, and I will not abuse them. I will not interfere with their lives, but they are interrupting my life and every other oppressed person's life every day. So if I get more people who believe that in general, humans are good, humanity is the basis, and it is not what kind of human you are, but how you apply your humanity, that is the most important, then all those people can become very powerful.
If there was one message that you wanted people to hear about Black Lives Matter, for each of you, if you both don't mind answering,
Yeah.
what would it be?
Oh, that's a good question.
Can you repeat that one more time?
If there was one message that you wanted people to know about Black Lives Matter, what would that message be?
So many things. Well, first of all, we're not terrorists. That's like one thing that has been driving me nuts. Like, I've been on the page for so long, and it was Calgary supports Black Lives Matter for years, and I was just like, you people are driving me nuts. I just want to change it to Black Lives Matter. Why can't it just be Black Lives Matter?
Yeah.
Just because people are so tense about the whole idea, and I get it, because we get so much hate, but seriously, we're not terrorists. We're honestly trying to help the community, and that's what's frustrating.
Okay.
I would say that my messaging is that we're demanding Black people and oppressed people have their whole existence. So everything that I do in my life is so that people can experience a full, thriving existence on this earth. Black Lives Matter. If you understand that the gauge of all oppression is anti-Blackness, you will understand that that's why Black Lives Matter is so important.
Why is the gauge of all oppression?
It's the easiest thing that you can use to demean somebody. Oprah is one of the best known Black people on earth. And quite frankly, she can buy the luxury brand. Mm-hmm. So to go into a store and for someone to assess Black, not good, is easy. a white person who has nothing can go into that same store and somebody will actually try and figure out whether they belong there or not. Quite frankly, it's a store. If you want to go in there, go.
Okay.
But what I'm saying is that black people have to prove that they're good in general.
Okay.
All
Our
the
bar's
time.
extremely high.
Yeah. Whereas white people can go anywhere and say I'm white and immediately be treated differently. So if you don't understand that having that as the good, not good bar standard, like you won't understand any other kind of oppression.
Okay. I can certainly understand that metric being applied somewhere in the United States. I think where I kind of wanted to ask that question a little bit is that I think that when it comes to systemic racism in Canada, there might be an argument to be made that First Nations probably have been more systematically oppressed / genocided than any other demographic specific to Canada.
In Canada.
Yeah.
Okay, but I exist in Canada. So if there's racism on Indigenous folks in Canada, for sure there's going to be racism on me.
Okay.
So just because there weren't 100,000 black people to kill here, doesn't mean that our lives don't matter.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
But that's the argument, is that because Indigenous folks have been horrifically treated at every intersection of their livelihoods, their lives, their experience, how does that diminish my experience?
No, I would argue that it doesn't.
Right. So that's why I'm saying, like, it doesn't diminish my experience. I 100% can understand that residential schools and racism against Indigenous people is horrific. However, I'm a black person. I can't identify with an Indigenous in Canada's situation.
Okay.
Black people are also Indigenous. I'm just not Indigenous to Canada. I'm Indigenous to Biafra. Straight out the village. So, like, to say that I'm also Indigenous, that it's not the same kind of oppression.
Okay.
I also want to say that the population of Canada is about 38 million people. And there's 42 million black people in the United States. So to use that as the gauge, like per capita, it's exactly the same. It's the same percentages. We just have less people here.
Okay.
Right.
It's
So
kind of like when you look at crime stats and they're like, well, they're killing more white people. It's like, okay, yes, it looks like that in the statistics. It's just the numbers are off, right? Because there's
Okay.
so little of us compared to white.
Does Black Lives Matter as an organization in Calgary, is there any kind of a partnership with other similar-minded groups like First Nations?
Actually, funny story, I'm also the admin of the Black Lives and Indigenous Lives Matter. So,
Okay.
I mean, there's a group for that as well. And within our group, we do have a large Indigenous following. So, like, we do communicate with each other. It's just obviously not on...
Well, they're two totally different
Yeah,
experiences, I imagine.
it's really hard.
Yeah.
And I also feel like the people who are in that experience are the best to know what that experience is and what they need, how to change whatever barrier it is that they're facing. So for me, like, I don't know what it's like to have a parent who was in a residential school or to live on a reserve. I know what it's like to live in a village. I know what it's like to have a parent that's an immigrant. There are similarities in treatment, but not necessarily how to fix that situation. So for me, like, it's my job to show up at missing, murdered Indigenous women events and shush, learn, and then take whatever I've learned there and apply it to my life. So when I'm having an encounter with an Indigenous person, I don't treat them like trash. Same with Asian people, same with disabled people, same with the LGBTQ community. And quite frankly, like, I hear where you're saying, are we partnering? That's what I'm asking, is for support. Okay. Because we don't need more voices drowning out our message. What we need is support so our message is amplified. So we have more spoons, resources, whatever, to go out into the world and have more people hear us. Whether they change their minds or not is up to them. We want to give that message to people. We want people to hear the message. It's not our job to change anybody. I can't control I can barely control my bladder sometimes. Like, that's not what it's about. We're happy to partner with people who want to support us, who want to amplify us, who want to help us gain more resources, more skills, so that we can get more Black people who feel like they are now supported and can be brave enough to stand in front and change their lives themselves. What I want to add is that, because a lot of people will take that message to be like, Black people are changing it. I can't change anybody's mind. I can bring the story. It is up to people in power and people who have privilege to actually do that work to change it, to make sure that we get the resources, to make sure we are heard, to make sure we have the support.
Because, we know no one's been listening to us. So, I mean, allies, they play a huge part. And that's all we need.
So how do you, with that, to sort of close things off, do you have any concerns that the recent wave of protests and advocacy that we've seen in Canada, in the States, around the world, are more an exercise in fashionability for some people?
Oh, for sure, it's performance.
Yeah.
Okay. So how do you move past that?
That's what we're doing. That's exactly what we're doing.
You just buckle down
honestly,
and keep doing it.
It just, everything ramped up, and I saw, hold on, there's a lot of groups like us. And then I was like, okay, this is good though, because then we can get more people with us. It's just knowing who's gonna stick around.
It's also like knowing who has the tools or the skill set to be able to discuss these issues, impact these issues without creating more trauma, more harm, more abuse. So I like to be very grassroots because I don't want to use colonialism, that's my lens, that's my experience, to change people's lives. It's not helping. So for me, I was like, yeah, great that we have more people. What's going to happen is the people who have not done the actual work, they're going to have to do it over and over and over. A lesson is repeated until it's learned. And Black Lives Matter isn't going anywhere. And anti-Blackness needs to be out the door. And if you're going to do it, I'm going to come for you. I'm going to tell you that's not okay. And we're building up an army of people who are going to do that too. And that means that people who aren't on the right side of history, who are harming folks for their own benefit or ignorance or whatever it may be, they're going to end up being on the right side of harm in these situations.
If there was one thing that you would say to somebody who's white, insecure about speaking out, afraid of saying the wrong thing, afraid of making things worse, afraid of being painted as one of the more oppressive folks as opposed to somebody who's trying to be an ally, right, what would you say to them?
I would say that at the end of the day, you're still alive. Like if a Black person makes any kind of mistake, we could die. The next thing I want to say is that Black people had to learn about racism through brutality. Nobody gave us a course, nobody was nice to us about it. We lost many lives all the time to learn about racism so we could protect ourselves and remain safe. So if a white person, a privileged person is making a mistake, they make mistakes in their lives every day and nobody does anything. Quite frankly, they're afraid of losing their power and their privilege. They're not afraid of supporting people and black people and making a mistake. If you want to retain your privilege and your power over blackness, you are not an ally, you are not an accomplice. If you make a misstep and you cannot accept that you are being corrected, you are not an ally. If you are doing something where you are benefiting and all of that does not go directly to black people, you are not an ally. So if you want to be an ally, you are going to make mistakes. I'm going to make mistakes. Elle's going to make, everybody makes mistakes all the time. Are you willing to correct those mistakes? Are you willing to change that behavior? And that is where those people have power. If you are not willing to change that behavior, you're not an ally. Continue on your journey. Go find your white nonsense corner.
I have one last question I want to ask, actually, because it just popped into my head.
That's 3 questions now.
I know. I keep doing last questions. I'm not a professional. I Twitter a lot.
Okay.
I Twitter a lot. And it was somebody recently hopped on my Twitter feed because I used a GIF of Obama dropping the mic.
Yeah.
I was told that I'm not allowed to use
You're not.
black GIFs.
Right.
They're the best ones too.
Right?
Oh, that's the problem.
Oh, but you don't
They're
get
way
to,
funnier. I can't help it that there
but
aren't that
you're
many.
not black.
Okay.
Obama had to face brutality and racism to be able to drop that mic. That's why it's so wonderful. That's why you don't get to do that, because you have not faced any of the obstacles or barriers that Obama has. So it is called electronic blackface.
I've heard that.
Yeah. Basically what it means is that you cannot take our cool experiences and appropriate them for you in a moment as a gift, as a meme.
How do you balance that, though, with...
Use white gifts.
But they're not that funny.
I know.
Then be funny.
I'm trying to, but...
No.
If the argument...
No,
If I may...
no argument. Oh, okay.
If the argument is that you have to lift up and support black people when they're doing things well, if I share a GIF of a black person doing something really funny, I'm not being like, oh, I'm that guy. Nobody's going to look at the GIF and go, oh, that's
you are.
Nate.
Yes, you are. That's why you're doing it, because you want to be like, I'm attached to him. That's your proximity to blackness, and that's not for you. Yeah, you don't get to say, I know this cool guy. He did this thing.
I don't know who the guy in the GIF is.
You
I
know
just know he's being real funny
Obama.
right now, and I want to give him
Right.
props for that.
No,
See, for
no,
me-
that's not what you're doing. If you want to give him props for that, you go to his page and you
How do I find a
say,
guy in a GIF?
you can do it. You can do it. Yeah? If you want to do so, you find all your black friends and you say, here's a GIF. There are so many other ways to support black people. Why aren't you doing it the ways that we are okay with? Why is it the way that you want to be okay with
Well,
it?
this goes into the second part of my question,
Yeah.
which I was saving for later. I have this is going to be the whitest thing I say in
Say
this
it!
whole interview.
It's on camera.
I have black friends who have told me that it is okay to use GIFs of black people.
Everybody is in a different place in their
Well,
journey.
this is what I'm saying.
Harriet Tubman said, I could have saved thousands more, if they had known that they were slaves. Because a black person is ignorant and is telling you, no, it's okay, doesn't mean continue when black people are telling you this is harmful. It's actually appropriation. It is the same reason why for Halloween you don't do blackface.
Or say the N-word. That's probably my biggest one in comparison. Because it's just like, I went to high school with this dude that dropped the N-bomb like I dropped the F-bomb. And I was like, dude, I caught him one day because someone told me about it. And I was like, there's no way there's a person that actually exists like this. And then I found him, called him out on it. He freaked out and he just like took off, but he never said it again. Like,
Okay.
It's kind of...
So how does a white person celebrate blackness without appropriating it then?
Oh, it's called appreciation.
Yes.
It means that you don't make yourself in proximity to it. You present it as it is, right? I mean, we are in COVID. So you present it as it is, their own independent, whatever it may be. Because what happens is when you appropriate, it's so you can benefit. When you appreciate, it's so that person benefits. It's like going to your boss and saying, hey, I met Elle and I helped her come up with this idea for this thing and here it is. Rather than, this is Elle. Elle has an idea. Elle, would you like to present your idea?
Okay.
Yeah. So if white people want to help black people, a lot of people have been asking me if they can make shirts for Black Lives Matter. No. Black people are making shirts. Go and support that person. Well, they do. How do I support them? Tell all your friends to buy those shirts. Buy 100 shirts and sell them or give them to your friends. Tell this person, how can I support you? Can I don't know, do some admin for you? Can I, those are the things that are helpful that don't have to have whiteness attached to it, that are appreciation and supportive.
Okay.
It's just like when you post it, you're expecting likes, right?
No, I'm not at all. Like, quite honestly,
Then why post it?
Exactly.
Well, then why are
Deep
you posting
down.
it?
It's funny. It says it makes
But
the
why
point
is
so
it
much better than the point
But
that I
why
could
do
make
you- but why are
using
you
like
making
a
that
Kool-Aid
point?
Man gif or something like that.
But why are you making that point? Are you making that point
Yeah, what's
so
the point,
people
though?
see you, hear you, understand that it's funny? Why?
I would, the argument that I would use, and honestly, is that I'm doing it because whatever that particular GIF is, it illustrates the point that much better. Usually when I'm using those GIFs, I'm not just like, oh, look, a black person because it's Tuesday. It's usually because it has something to do with some kind of racialized conversation, and I'm trying to insert that little bit of a reminder. There are people who have really good points on this.
Okay, I'm going to stop you right there.
Okay.
The point is that when you, regardless of your intent, the impact is that you're dressing up as a black person. And that's wrong, because we're not a costume to be used at your discretion.
Okay.
So you are saying my intent is to uplift, but I'm saying that's not what's happening. And the reason why you don't get a say in that is because it's our experience.
So, to play devil's advocate, because I'm trying to wrap my head around this, and I'm not trying to be difficult, just to be clear.
You're being difficult, so whether you were trying to or not, it makes no difference.
If I recommend to a friend an album
Yes.
by a black artist,
Yes.
how is that different?
Yeah, because you are not dressing yourself up in it. When you're using a GIF, the intention of a GIF is to express your personal emotion.
Oh, I would argue that anybody who's recommending any kind of music is doing the same thing.
But it's not.
That's almost like promotion, though. That's like legitimately a form of promotion.
Okay.
Right.
Like
However,
if I gave you one of my shirts that I sell, that's promotion, right? You're appreciating it.
Right. Rather than sing. So you're saying if I say that this person, like if I recommend a record, a song, whatever, an album,
Sure.
to someone, you're saying this person is doing something good. A GIF, the intention of a GIF, the impact of a GIF is to show your personal emotion through the internet, because you can't actually do that. And that's why it's wrong. So GIFs showed up, it's like an emoji. That's why you don't put the black face emoji. You don't put the black smiley
I just use
face.
the default yellow one because I'm too lazy to scroll through the rest.
Exactly.
Which is funny because it's a default.
Right.
Right?
But it's the yellow one, not the white one is my default.
But yeah, but the default for white is yellow. Yes.
It's like the
Because are the
Simpsons.
Simpsons yellow or white? They're white. You know it. It's like
Ironically,
the
I'm
fist.
actually colorblind, so I don't know the
Oh
answer
my
to that
gosh.
question.
Thank you. So not being difficult at all. That pound.
That one was. I'll own that one.
That pound, I put this pound up every time, every single solitary time. Now, like, when I say that you're putting the default, it's because whiteness is the center.
It's always
We're Eurocentric in this world right now.
Okay.
So people think that white is the default. It is not. So when you when we're saying, hey, don't use the black gift as the white person, is because you have so much. Like, you have access to so many things. Whiteness is everywhere, and black people do not. So we want to express ourselves until all of our expressions are being acknowledged and accepted in this world. Because white people have all kinds of responses, and you said, I want to share the good black response, which is Obama dropping the mic. It's such a good response. Like, how many responses do you choose to give that are like negatively black?
I never do.
Ding, ding, ding. So then you can't use the positive ones because it's not your experience. Because black people, that's our experience. Like, when I do something negative, it comes out as negative black. When I do something positive, it's positive black. You are picking and choosing, and that's not okay.
Okay. Interesting.
We actually have to go.
Okay.
We
Well,
have another appointment.
Thank you so much for sitting down and chatting.
I did not think we were going to be here this long.
These things tend not to go short. So thank you so much. And,
No worries. Thank
I
you.
really appreciate you being as generous with your time as you have been.
Yeah, no, for sure.
It was great.
Now, with all of that being said, and we know that it's a lot to take in, here at The Breakdown, we believe that context and facts are key to building the framework for any meaningful conversation on any topic. So with that in mind, we did a little digging as to why exactly the original smiley face is yellow. It turns out the smiley was created as part of a morale campaign for a company that had just dealt with a run of difficult mergers and acquisitions. The color yellow was apparently chosen because it's the happiest color, and the smiley face grew from there. Emojis are an extension of emoticons and were created in Japan by an engineer for a Japanese phone company. Given that the first emoji were clearly modeled after the first smiley face, it's pretty obvious why emojis are set with a default yellow color, and it doesn't appear to have anything to do with race. We also looked into the reason as to why the Simpsons are yellow. It turns out that creator Matt Groening was deeply concerned that making the Simpsons white wouldn't be eye-catching enough when people are flipping through the channels. As Groening told the BBC, one of his animators presented him with the yellow skin tone, and it had the eye-catching effect Groening was after. Which makes sense, because many cartoon characters are yellow. And there's actually a scientific reason for that. Because of the way that color modeling is done on TV, yellow stands out incredibly well against blue. Many cartoons take advantage of this and use yellow characters on a blue background. It doesn't appear to have anything to do with race and much more to do with effective marketing. We also reached out to the City of Calgary Media Department to try and determine how many black people have died in the course of interactions with the Calgary Police. When we did, we were told that race is not a data point that is tracked in lethal encounters, but we were referred to an excellent article by the CBC that details deaths that have occurred in the course of interactions with the police using deadly force. According to that article, in the last 20 years, there have been 2 encounters where a black person has died while involved in an interaction with the Calgary Police where the police used force. The first was in 2003, where a CPS officer was attempting to assist an intoxicated individual after he was refused entry to an apartment building. While the officer was walking with the individual up a flight of stairs to transport him to a shelter, the man pulled a knife and stabbed the officer, who then shot the man and killed him. The second was in 2008. Calgary police responded to a 911 call where a man stated that he had killed his wife. When the police arrived, the man was threatening police with a knife, and after less than lethal options failed, he was shot and killed. His wife was found stabbed to death in their bedroom. So in the last 20 years, Calgary has had 2 black people die as a result of police use of force in Calgary. By way of comparison, Toronto has had 19. None of this is to say that BIPOC individuals don't experience racism at the hands of police. There are many stories of harassment and inappropriate treatment, and we absolutely agree that if someone is treated badly by the police, particularly because of their race, that needs to be addressed in such a way that ensures that it doesn't happen again. Canada has a systemic racism problem. There's no question about that, and we do not dispute that. And like we said in the introduction to this episode, there are going to have to be a lot of uncomfortable conversations for us to be able to move from recognizing the problem to start to taking the steps to fix the problem. We believe strongly at The Breakdown that while those conversations need to be respectful of people's feelings, They also have to be based on accurate facts with as much accurate context as possible. And that's the episode. As always, if you appreciate what we're trying to do here at The Breakdown, please consider signing up as a monthly supporter at our Patreon site, www.patreon.com/thebreakdownab. And if you're listening to the audio version of our podcast, please consider leaving us a review and a rating. And don't forget to like and follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thank you for your attention.